here we go. How we doing? All right. We're a little sparse, but all right. Those at home, welcome as well. Again, if you did on paper, you can put it up here. Today we have a lot going on here, so get your historical seatbelt on. We're going to get ready to go with this here. I think we're going to start off with a Kahoot. We're going to start with a Kahoot. All right, and so here is the pin. All right. So I think I'm in full screen mode there. Looks like I'm in full screen mode. So at home, let's join in. I think what I did last hour, I was a little generous. The top five gets the bonus points, and I'll add the bonus points onto the Cold War Steps activity. Are you able to enter? Sorry, start seeing some people. All right. So those at home, let's participate. All right, let's join in. Now I did mute the Kahoot music, so if you feel like being denied the Kahoot music, yes you are. I'm just not feeling it. Just not feeling the Kahoot music. Wow. Okay, while you're signing in, I'll just go through attendance here. All right, there will be some questions that might be sticky. This is where I probably got hung up on the details elements. Like when you studied the conferences. There were 3 conferences, so there have some subtle differences with them. All right, I think what we'll do is we're going to get ready, rock and roll here. So appreciate for those who have joined. So let's just start this thing. There's 15 of them. 15. This conference called for a new international organization and need for a weak Germany. All right, so these were the 3 conferences that you had to focus on. So which one is that? And I think I have myself unmuted, so hopefully. All right, Tehran is it. I'm going to check, see if I got my mute button on. No, we're all good there. All right, I got a lot of tabs. Yes, it is. Tehran is the first one that we are looking at here. And I think, with the Tehran conference, it was, we're beginning to know that there are some subtle differences. All right, there are some subtle differences between our thinking. All right, so let's go on to the next one. Here's our early leaders here. If I would say like last hour, I think by the 5th question, we've had some lead changes big time. All right, here we go. Number 2. Who is this world leader? So we're going to have a mug shot here. Who is it? Is it Winston Churchill, Clement Attlee, or Konrad Adenauer? Yes, it is Winston Churchill, who we in the United States, we probably like him a lot, maybe because his mother is from the United States. But he kind of sees eye and eye with the American presidents. The other 2 guys, they're Germans. They might have been chancellors at one time or another of West Germany. Except Clement Attlee. Excuse me, let me scratch that. He's British. All right. Here we go, number 3. Oh, his logic of force argument. was key in the development. So this person is the developer of the containment policy, influenced the creation of the containment policy. George Marshall, George Kennan, or Harry S. Truman? Yes, it is George Kennan. And I do see you might think of Harry Truman. He gave a speech that spoke about containment that becomes important, but it's all based on George Kennan. He's the architect. He spent some time observing the Soviet Union. And his containment was really about containing the Soviet Union, but as the Cold War progresses, so does that containment policy change. All right, so we got some changes. Oh boy, do not give up yet. Hang in there. Number 4. This speech marked a break from U.S. isolationism. It was the start of our containment policy. So here we go. A break from U.S. isolationism. Work on short-term memory here. Yes, it is the Truman Doctrine. The key here is U.S. isolationism. Iron Curtain speech was given by a British guy. All right, so the Truman Doctrine is actually based on a speech that Harry Truman gave to Congress, scaring congressional leaders into giving military aid and economic aid to Greece and Turkey to hold off communism. There. All right, we got some changes. All right, remember bonus points for the top 5. Their control of Eastern Europe was because of salami tactics, economic ties, and military occupation. Was it the United States, Great Britain, or the Soviet Union? So which of these 3 engaged in salami tactics? I'll explain what salami tactics is in a moment. There we go. It is the Soviet Union that engaged in salami tactics. I like it now and then throughout this Cold War. We will use things like salami tactics or the Sinatra Doctrine after Frank Sinatra, which is a real doctrine as well, because he always talked about did it my way, so let them do it their way. But salami tactics is referencing how the Soviets were carving out Eastern Europe, one country at a time. And a Hungarian communist leader says it's like slicing salami, one slice at a time. So that hung on, that caught on to this type of tactic, and it becomes known as salami tactic. There you go. Dynamic. We got some shifts. All right. This event in Eastern Europe was directly responsible for the implementation of the Marshall Plan. So which of these events caused the Marshall Plan to be put into practice? The Czech coup of 48, the Berlin blockade of 49, or the Polish crisis of 46? All of them are real. It just depends which one it is. It is the Czech coup that is going to initiate it. We want to try to prevent more countries from falling, and so the idea is let's prop up their economies. And if their economy is stable, that will lead to political and social stability as well. Get money in your pocket, let's see you get a plane. All right, just a little changes here. Ooh, here we go. This could change the leaderboard. This conference had the support of the big 3 for democratic governments based on free elections. They all agree in theory to it. In reality, it didn't happen. So this is where we're going to accuse Stalin of backing out. Yes, it is Yalta. Also, if you put it in context, which one, the 2 of them you did not even have to look at. You only had to look at Yalta in the group, but Casablanca and Cairo are also real wartime conferences. They were just much earlier. They were focusing on things like opening up that second front in the Second World War. Yalta, is it. All right. So we got some changes. Anna, you're on fire. All right, here we go. Churchill's warning was seen as one of the defining moments that hardened the opinions. Was that the Iron Curtain speech? Was it the Marshall Plan? Or was it the Truman Doctrine? Short-term memory would indicate it's between two of them. Yes, it is the Iron Curtain speech. Truman Doctrine was earlier. All right, it's the Iron Curtain speech. All right. Is anyone going to crack in? The top 5 here. They disagreed. All right, so we're going to add another conference, it looks like here. They disagreed over the percentage agreement. Eastern Europe was becoming a Soviet sphere. Was it the Newfoundland Conference, London Conference, or Potsdam Conference? Yes, and it is the Potsdam Conference. And the one thing with that photo indicated there was a change in leadership. At the Potsdam Conference, we have a new president, and it's Harry Truman. Previous 2 conferences, photos had Franklin D. Roosevelt. Roosevelt has passed away. All right, so the percentage agreement is based really on troops in that particular country. And so the more troops you had in it, the greater voice you were going to have in that occupying agreement. So Eastern Europe was going to be their sphere, it looked like, based on percentages. So here we go. Number 10, the failure of this event led to a divided Germany, NATO formation, and four-power control of Berlin. Potsdam Conference, Berlin coup, or the Berlin blockade. All right, and it is the Berlin blockade with the Schokolade, with the chocolate bars coming down. All right, but so again, when we look at the Berlin blockade, it really did have some far-reaching effects. You know, a divided Germany, and it will remain divided all the way up to 1990. You'll have the formation of NATO, and it's still with us today. It's changed some of its focus. The four-power control of Berlin, in order for German unification to happen, eventually those four powers that occupied Berlin would have to agree to it, even though the war is so long ago, right? So there we go, far-reaching. All right, no changes in the leaderboard here, really. Dollar diplomacy, goal was to revive European economies in order for stability to occur. So which of these is going to do that? Is it the Truman Doctrine, the Molotov Plan, or the Marshall Plan? All of them are real. And it is the Marshall Plan, okay? Molotov, that sounds, you know, Eastern Europe. Sounds Russian-like, all right? And the Truman Doctrine, we know, is really the framework for our Cold War policy, and every president afterwards will have some type of doctrine that tweaks it. Here we go. Oh, here we go. We got a mugshot here. Who's this world leader? Is it Alfred E. Neuman, Dwight D. Eisenhower, or Harry Truman? It is Harry Truman. Yes, someone picked Alfred E. Neuman, the character from the Mad magazine is Alfred E. Neuman, which is appropriate from the Cold War era. His most favorite saying is, what me worry? You know, if we knew that you're going to blow up, you know, what do I have to worry about if I know I'm going to blow up? Dwight D. Eisenhower had a little bit less hair than Harry Truman. All right. Oh, all right. Ooh, this is going to bust up the board maybe here. All right, a term used to describe Moscow trained leaders. All right, because once the war got over, they got on a train, they took everything with them, and off came the Polish leader, off came the Hungarian leader, off came the East German leader. What kind of train? Yes, it is the baggage train. Carpetbagger train. Carpetbagger just references the Reconstruction era in the United States. You know, anyone from the north going south were called carpetbagger, based after their type of suitcase they had made out of carpet. Sky pilots, they're just traveling preachers, moving from camp to camp. Baggage train. That was just one of these little technicality pieces. Reference coming out of the section that dealt with Red Army occupation of Eastern Europe. All right, here we go. This last one. Last one's going to be Fast and Furious. Okay. Yeah, really. All right, this next one. I think this one's going to go fast. Okay, maybe not on this one. Sorry, this is question 15. In response to the Marshall Plan, the Soviets came up with this plan to aid Eastern Europe. Was it the Kosygin Plan, the Gromyko Plan, Molotov Plan? All three of them are real Soviet officials. And it is the Molotov Plan. Wow. Okay. All right. Now, the next one's going to go fast. Who is this one? Yes, it's the one and only Joseph Stalin. All right. So let's see what we got here on the podium. All right. The winner is Henry. Henry's the winner. Runner-up, Anthony and Anna. All right. There we go. Thanks for participating with that piece there. Just a nice little review of the Cold War steps. These are the foundation pieces. And now every event afterwards and policy, conference, clashes, all that stuff is just going to add more layers and drama to the Cold War. All right. Now, what I want to do here is going to focus now on the Cold War at home. But before that, again, thanks for participating. All right, I want to focus on the Cold War at home. And those that are at home, I would like for you to open up this treasure chest here. It's going to look something like this. Those here, I've got it. So I want us to take a look at the Cold War at home, and that means maybe look at a little propaganda. And I got a comic book here that I want us to look at. Okay, so those at home, let's please open this up. I'm going to turn on some lights so we see this a little bit. What I want you to do with this is, as we look at this comic book, take a look at what's the message. You know, what's the message? So we want to look at message, and we want to see the, so it's like we're in an OPL here in some ways. See if we can find the origin of who's publishing this, more likely like that, and then how effective is it. So let's take 10 minutes, read it, see what kind of messages are in there, what kind of reactions we get, see if we can find the source, all right? And then we'll talk about it. So let's take about 10 minutes. And for those at home, you're looking at the first 8 pages in this one. I suppose those that are here, if you want to see it in color, you can go online and click on the one that's online. All right. So you may not be done, but take a look here. What's the message or messages? Because I think there's a number of them in here. But what would we say? What do you got?
Like overall concept is communism is bad.
Okay, overall, the concept here, communism is bad. Bad. It is godless communism. How the communist government takes over everything. Yes, how the communist government takes over everything. So go through that method. How they take over everything. What do you got? Okay, so what's that look like in a communist nation according to this comic book? What does it look like? What does life look like? What do you got?
All of the previous workers have been changed and switched out. Like, everyone that is in the factory, and then also like the children are getting changed by not being within into special schools.
Okay, so type of work has changed, and children now are going to go to like consumals or similar type schools and separated. That's huge. Anything else? Okay, religious values replaced with communist values. All right, and those at home, feel free to add as well your thoughts to this. What do you got, Anna? Yes. Say that again about the family.
They decided what's going to happen to the family, and if they don't do it.
Yes. So again, in a planned or command economy, command society, it lays out how the family structure should be. And it's being showcased for the women. It's showcased as new freedom in some ways? It is. It is. But someone might think, well, we don't want that. Okay. Now again, it might be hard, but we got to try to look through this from the lens of someone in the 1950s and 1960s, because this was published in 1961. Right? It's published, there's a letter here, least in March 1961. We scroll down here. It gives reference to, so it's around that time period as well here. All right. Who's publishing it? Did you pick up on that?
It's not written by the
Okay, so the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover, and there's a lot of dynamics there with J. Edgar Hoover, but he does have a moment where he can share his thoughts. And but let's talk about the United States government is not publishing this. But if we scroll down here, you see that there's a publishing company right here, and this publishing company also is a publisher for the Youth Catholic Messenger, Junior Catholic Messenger, and Our Little Messenger. This is a company, a publishing firm that produces religious pamphlets. All right, and this magazine or this comic book was published from 1946 to 1972. All right, so you've just got a little snippet here, and I just had us read the first 8 pages, but there are others, other stories in this edition. And if you're curious, you can always get online and you can look at it, because I have a link to it there, the file. And so most likely, this comic book would be found in a K through 12 school. If I taught in a Catholic high school, you come walking in my classroom, I probably have a stack of these things. Here we go. Here weekly reading. And pass it out to you. And so maybe that also gives reference to why they are hitting home this idea of this godless communism. And in this section, there seems to be a lot of reference to religion, isn't there? And in theory, in a communist world, what's the role of religion? It's supposed to be non-existent. We know, though, through our study, they have a hard time clamping down on that thing. It's very hard. I'm going to tell people of Cuba they can't practice their religion. No way. Fidel Castro realized that's a lost cause. The Polish leaders realized, the Pope John Paul II, he's from Poland. There's no way you can tell Polish Catholics they can't be Catholics. And in the Soviet Union, they even found how hard it is. I think Joseph Stalin's says World War II, hey, bring it back. Lets it come back. So it's very hard. So the Catholic Church in the United States is probably one of the biggest anti-communist crusaders. Right? And so who's the target audience for this? What's that? Yeah, it's to the younger audience. I mean, they're the ones that are going to read comic books. I mean, today I'll probably read a comic book still, but it's more like you show up to the school, Catholic school, or even if you're going to catechism classes, if you're Catholic and you go through your Sunday or Wednesday classes and stuff like that, and you get a little handout, you bring it home. I might look at it as well. Again, the young are impressionable. Is this effective? Do you think this is an effective piece? Those at home or anything? Effective? I see some heads going up. Yeah, effective. Yeah, this is probably effective. And heck, if J. Edgar Hoover puts a letter in here and you're a kid, you say, oh, FBI director has got some message for me, it's probably going to lay a big impression. This is going to be effective. Even though today we might be a little cynical and for real, they're going to blow up the Washington Monument. And probably it's not going to blow up that way anyhow. But and some of those other things, of course, they go to the extreme, but it's effective. Now, I remember my first year teaching this class and then using this, and one of my students she was actually from Poland, and she's like, yeah, it's pretty accurate. And we're like, really? Pretty accurate? She says, well, yeah, there's maybe some extreme elements to it, but again, the message in there is consistent with how they were taught about communism. And she grew up in a post-communist Poland, but hearing from her mother and father and stuff like that. All right, so there we go. Any final thoughts on this? If we had a little bit more time with this, I'd probably break out another comic book, and it's called The Bearded Ones, or The Man with the Beard, and it's referencing Fidel Castro. And it was written by a guy named Stan Lee. Is he kind of big? If anyone knows anything about the Marvel movies, Stan Lee, and he always has guest appearances. This is before I think people in the United States really knew the full intentions of Fidel Castro, because he wrote it right at the time of Fidel Castro taking over Cuba. And I think we in the United States probably were intrigued by the guy with the beard. And I think they call them Los Babutos, something like that, the bearded ones in some ways. But then interesting is once we realize Fidel Castro's full intentions, the storyline is not mentioned in the official Marvel magazine comic book storyline in their timeline of history. And they used to be part of, I think it was called Action Comics. There's another name, precursor to Marvel. But somehow Stan Lee didn't want to be known publicly official record that he did a magazine or a comic book on Fidel Castro. Publicly, that probably wasn't going to look good. You got to be an anti-communist crusade. All right. Thanks for looking at that. Now, this is one way the Cold War comes, right? And the use of propaganda and publications, all that stuff. I got a video clip here that's going to showcase Cold War coming home also in another way, all right? And how we're going to take care of that. So let's watch that. It's probably about 3-4 minutes, and then we'll go from there. So let me mute myself.
By September 1949, he had it.
Grim news. The communist bloc also has the atom bomb.
In the West, smug superiority gave way to alarm.
Behind the Iron Curtain, the most sobering threat ever to menace free men. The target area is our North American continent. But the bullseye of the enemy's target is you, your family, your home.
We're living in a country that's the finest place on earth. But some folks don't appreciate this land that gave them birth. I hear it up in Washington, they're having an awful fuss. Those communists and spies are making monkeys out of us. The bureaus and departments have been busy night and day. They're figuring out just how we gave our secrets all away. And Congress has appointed a committee, so they said, to find out who's American and who's a low-down red.
Communism in reality is not a political party. It is a way of life, an evil and malignant way of life. It reveals a condition akin to disease that spreads like an epidemic. And like an epidemic, a quarantine is necessary to keep it from infecting this nation.
Stalin's atom bomb and the communist takeover in China drove America into its own sort of paranoia. Communists, real or imagined, were pursued in the full glare of publicity.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
It's unfortunate and tragic that I have to teach this committee the basic principles of Americanism.
That's not the question. Are you or have you ever been a member of the Communist Party?
I have never sullied the honor of the American people.
Are you a member of the Communist Party?
Are you a member of the Communist Party?
There is not a communist bone in my body.
As I travel around, I still have people say, well, why are you so hard on communists? They're just another political party like any other, and a poor minority at that, and so misunderstood. Well, we don't want them misunderstood, and that's why we're making this film. And that's why I say they are lying, dirty, shrewd, godless, murderous, determined, and it is not an American political party like any other. It's an outlawed organization, taking its orders and instructions from another government to do everything possible to destroy our government. It's an international criminal conspiracy.
Sorry, I muted. And boy, I was on a roll. At least I believe I was on the roll. Those that are here probably like, oh boy, but I'm on a roll. All right, so here we go. Home front. I want to focus a little bit here on the home front and how it impacted us socially, politically, and economically here early on in the Cold War, the early phases of it, or the first part of it, up to about 1963. So I got a copy of these online. I'll focus on this a little bit, and I think, and then we'll see where we're at when I'm all said and done here. All right, so the Cold War at home. Who's this president? Yeah, it's Dwight Eisenhower. Dwight Eisenhower, absolutely. Do we find him on any of our money? Oh. Back in the day, there would be, we used to have dollar coins, bigger than they are today. I mean, they were like about that. Yeah, that big. Imagine having a pocket full of those. You know, you're running down the street, you might lose your pants because of how heavy they are. And they hurt. I know, because my brother threw a bunch of them at me, you know. That's what older brothers do. But his face would appear on those big silver dollars. So, yes, yes. Kennedy would appear on them as a result of assassination. All right. So we'd have, I think we also have 50-cent pieces as well. Okay, so politics, definitely, we're going to see a change here in politics. If you're going to go into politics, you better showcase your anti-communist crusader credentials. You better be hardcore, hardliner on communism. You cannot be soft on communism. If you are, they're going to be in doubt. Truman, he was accused of being soft on communism when we lost, as they say, we lost China to the communists. So in many ways explains why we go to Korea, and then why he agrees to do loyalty review boards for federal employees and stuff like that. If you're going to run for any office, local, state, national, you need to be anti-communist crusaders. And our presidents are going to lead the way in doing that. They're going to become very powerful. Some might say they act almost very imperial in nature, which would be arbitrary at times. They wielded more power during this time, and Congress, so if we talk about balance of power between Congress and the presidency, it kind of swung towards the president, because they can do things like through executive orders and executive agreements. They can sidestep Congress, and they're going to do that. The CIA is going to be formed at this time, and the CIA actually would report directly to the president. So they sidestep Congress here as well. So the president becomes extremely powerful at this time. Now, during this time period, of course, McCarthy, Joseph McCarthy out of Wisconsin, he's going to be in Congress, I want to say, from about 46 to 57. He defines this whole era. But there's more to it. So those people going before Congress, yeah, you know, that's part of McCarthyism. But what we really are is we're worried about a fifth column in the United States. Internal subversive action. If the government is going to go down, it's because of something internally is going to break it down, which means they also could be working with Moscow, because again, it's the International Communist Conspiracy, the ICC. All right, taking orders from Uncle Joe or whoever the Soviet leader is at that time. All right, loyalty programs become part of it. The federal government in 1947 comes up with a loyalty program, questionnaires. They look at everything that you are doing. If you're under suspicion, all right? So again, if I am a federal employee and all of a sudden I'm accused of being a communist, I mean, they are going to look at everything. They're coming to my house and they look and see my books and they're like, oh, you got a book by Pasternak, you know, Dr. Zhivago, you're a communist. Great book. Or they look at my record players and my records, and they're like, man, you got some records by Tchaikovsky and Shostakovich. You got to be a communist. It's like, well, I have, some records by Elvis Presley too, and that probably wouldn't help because he's breaking up the status quo. So who knows? That could be a problem too. But also, large corporations also engage in loyalty programs too. So if you work for like General Electric, or you work for a major bank, or you work for a major insurance company, anyone in the media, you probably would have to fill out a questionnaire that you're not a communist. Increased use of the House Un-American Committee, Activities Committee, HUAC, I should say. So there should be another A in there. House for Un-American Activities Committee was initially created to find who our fascists are in the country. Now, we're not so much focusing on finding fascists because that war is over. Now we need to find who our commies are and be brought before. And one of their early targets is Hollywood. They're going to go after Hollywood. Now, does Hollywood influence you and I? Can it influence us? How we think, how we act, what we eat? Absolutely, it can. You see it on the screen. It's like, oh, I got to get these little shoes. Well, I got to have that hairstyle. Or I got to act that way, talk that way. So Hollywood they figured, you know what? If there is a fifth column, Hollywood's got to be working with them. The films are coming up with, they must be subverting our frame of thinking. So they go after them, and they go out, and there's a group known as the Hollywood 10 that become kind of like the fall here. Hollywood gives up 10 of its writers and directors in order for them to move on and make Disney movies. Because we need more Disney movies, and we need some good Western dramas and all that stuff. And so they did. They gave up 10 of their directors. Ronald Reagan was head of the Screen Actors Guild and said that they will work with the FBI to find out who the communists are in Hollywood. Now, Hollywood actors are going to go in support of some of these 10. But what would happen if you go and give support to someone who's accused of being a communist? You must be a commie. So what's going to happen to your ability to work in Hollywood? Is it going to go down? You might be put on what kind of list? A watch list? There's a color. Yeah, you're going to be put on a blacklist. You got blacklist, red list, all that stuff. And if you get put on the blacklist, forget about it. You are now not going to be hired. Not going to be hired, or you're not going to be able to direct film, stuff like that. If you want to be a director, you might have to leave the country and become a director that way. If you're a screen actor or a screenwriter, I should say, you want to write manuscripts and all that stuff, you might have to hire someone to publish it for you under a different name. So like the movie Spartacus, I don't know if you've ever seen that or heard about it. It was a big epic movie that came out in the 60s. Kirk Douglas was the actor in it, his son Michael Douglas. But the screenwriter for Spartacus, Dalton Trumbull, but you will not see his name with Spartacus. Someone else is going to get credited. It's not until later does it come out that Dalton Trumbull, who was part of the Hollywood 10, was behind the screenwriting of it. It got to that point. All right, sorry, digressed. Showcase trials. Showcase trials are just not exclusive to fascist and communist regimes or those extreme. We will have those showcase trials. We've had a number of them in the United States. Scopes trial in the 1920s would be an example of it. OJ trial in the 1990s could be an example of a showcase trial as well, just meaning that there's a lot of attention when we say showcase trials. Lots of attention. Here you have Alger Hiss and the Rosenbergs. Remember, the communist government was able to get atomic secrets. Someone in the United States must have gave it up. Alger Hiss, the Rosenbergs, are going to be examples of people that are going to be tried for that. Elger Hiss is not going to be convicted for giving up secrets, though. Even though, you know, some say he's connected with some communist or Soviet agents and out there, and he claims he's not. He lied under oath, so convicted of perjury. Down the road, though, in the 1990s, when documents become declassified, there is a couple documents that are kind of like that smoking gun kind of document that shows he might have been an agent in there. The Rosenbergs, they're scientists. They're the ones accused of giving up atomic secrets. They're convicted and executed. Right, 1953, the Rosenbergs. It was extraordinary at that time, 1953, to execute a female prisoner. And what made it probably even bigger was the Rosenbergs also had kids. And so their sons will have to grow up in the United States. They grow up in the United States. They get adopted, so they have different last names now. But they spent their entire life trying to clear mom and dad. However, again, documents classified show that mom and dad may have been involved in giving up secrets. So big stuff. And then, of course, you get McCarthyism associated with Joseph McCarthy and the red baiting. It's all about his tactics. Say what you want about the past several years about how we look at media and how we look at information and whether or not it's real or not. Some might look at McCarthyism as kind of like a pioneer in using sketchy evidence and making claims that are unsubstantiated, exaggerating, you know, claiming that there are millions of communists in the United States. I mean, do we have communists in the United States? Yeah, we do. We got communists. I'm not one of them, because I'm looking at the camera. I am not a communist, but if we put it in perspective, reality, we put it in perspective, at this time period, there's about 150 million Americans in the 1950s. 50,000 of them are known card-carrying members of the Communist Party. So when Joseph McCarthy says the Midwest is loaded with communists, right? Minnesota, Wisconsin, Iowa, it would be like, you know, communist haven, based on his charts and all this stuff and how red they are. It really is not the case. We did have communists and did they run for office? Try to, but just like some of the other third parties and extreme groups we have in our country, very minimal success. But again, the atmosphere, it's the atmosphere. All right, sorry, digress. Society, what happens to society? Well, it permeates various levels of society. Fear, paranoia, the thought of a fifth column. You want to get even with your neighbor, just call him a commie. Sounds like the Salem witch trials, doesn't it? Yeah, you want to take care of your neighbor, call him a witch. You know, realistically, you want their farm, but you just call them a witch. And then you get the farm. Person's up at night mowing their lawn. They gotta be a communist. Only a communist mows their lawn at night. Who knows? But it's the fear and the fear of a fifth column. Permeates it. So what do we do in the 1950s? We gotta show that we are gonna conform. We're gonna go to places like church, which is viewed as an American institution. We're gonna go to some of those clubs. We're going to do those little family activities, things that make us look like we conform. We're going to keep up with the Joneses, all that stuff. So we did see in the 1950s a new interest in tradition, or renewed interest in traditional institutions. But there is psychological harm. There's going to be a lot of trauma being created here. Families are going to be busted up. Marriages are going to go downhill as a result of being accused of a communist spy, or engaging in some type of non-conformity activity. The red menace is going to be there. All right, violation of fundamental constitutional rights, because here in the United States, what do we fundamentally believe? That we can say what we want, be able to join whatever group we want, we got certain freedoms. Here in the 1950s and 60s, we'll see that laws are going to be passed kind of restricting those. So we're going to have some violations. And then when we talk about civil rights legislation in there as well, you know, civil rights movement in many ways is being viewed in the 50s as disrupting the status quo. Communism is disrupting the status quo. Civil rights is disrupting the status quo. Many accuse Martin Luther King Jr. and organizations and his activities that are associated with him and all that as communists. And J. Edgar Hoover is going to try to portray him as that. Problematic. All right. Also, when we talk about at home, how do we keep ourselves safe? Keep ourselves safe. You know, I think a few days ago I talked about, you know, how we take care of our farms if a bomb goes off. All right. There's an example of a pamphlet of that. The government effort is to create a policy. And they're going to try to do it, but it's more of a patchwork. Because sometimes in the United States, we like to tag off and let states decide. So like North Dakota actually had a very elaborate plan. All right, but one would say North Dakota should probably have an elaborate plan because there's a lot of missile silos that were in North Dakota and in South Dakota as well, and Minnesota. So they have all these coordinated efforts or these policies they're trying to put together, these lovely little duck and cover kind of drills and everything to go with it. But so much of it is based on the unknown. Because how many times have we detonated atomic bombs or nuclear bombs on people? Twice. And that was 1945. Here it is, 1961. You know, when that comic book came out, there's a lot has changed. And it's got a lot more powerful. Weapons got way more powerful. Fear of the bomb, we created bomb shelters, but as pointed out in this class, you know, if you're at the old Oatman and you ate lunch in the old Oatman, you're in a bomb shelter. So you can just sit there and eat your PB&J sandwich and you're fine if the bomb went off. Do you think you really would be fine? No. Because how deep in the ground was it? It's like a basement. And yeah, you got the concrete and all that stuff. Yes.
The nuclear bomb shelter was in the basement. It wasn't the basement. It was in the back.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. You're right. You're right. But the thought is, you know, you're in close to that space. You're close to that space. But yeah, it probably would not. It would have to be way deep in there, you know, in order for you to be protected. We talk about all these bunkers that exist today. That, you know, bunker for the White House and to protect the president. You gotta have these bunker busting bombs that do exist out there. All right. But we have those visible reminders, campaigns out there. We see these handouts. We see these symbols still out there. Reality is these things became so potent, so powerful. We almost got, I don't want to say comfortable, but got used to reality that this could be it. And what can I really do? What me worry? You know, I got to worry about something else, maybe. Finally here, probably the big thing shift here is how it affected our economy. This will be my last points here. It does change the structure of the economy. We talked about the military-industrial complex. The economy and the military became tied together. And so changes in the distribution of industry, the types of industries that are being promoted, high-tech, defense-related industries are becoming big. And if you're in a state where there was defense industry, it's going to be a big boom. So like California, 21% of defense contracts went to the state of California because of, well, we talk about Silicon Valley. All right, Silicon Valley is starting to be created here, the high tech. Or if you're in the aerospace business, Pacific Northwest, Washington, with Boeing and McDonnell Douglas, big. Or in the southern states, where they have defense-related industries. That's going to be big. And so we see a shift in population as well as a result of it. This is huge. And the creation of a garrison state, what that means is we're on a state of high alert. You know, when they say that, you know, we go on DEFCON 1, that means, you know, it's big time. If you're DEFCON, it's like, all right, we're relaxed. But each time there's something big that happens, we're moving up, moving up. All right. There was a movie that came out in the 1980s called War Games. I don't know if anyone's ever seen that. It was an early Matthew Broderick in it. It's kind of neat. You should watch it. But the threat, whenever there's a nuclear threat out there, it's game on. And so what does that mean for young men 18 or older? You could get drafted. I mean, we saw Elvis Presley's going to get drafted. Well, no, I don't know if we saw it in this class. But Elvis Presley gets drafted. I mean, he had some sweet hair, and now he's got to get cut. Now, I think it's interesting is Elvis did not get the traditional, like, you know, buzz cut that you get in the military. Still looked pretty good. So he might have got some preferential treatment while he was in Germany. But that's part of the garrison state. State of readiness, compulsory draft, or the possibility of draft is there. And also just the presence of the military. I think about our highway system that was being created. You know, President Biden's talking about his big infrastructure package. He says it's the biggest thing since Eisenhower. Well, Eisenhower creates the interstate highways not so we can get, you know, down to the Florida beaches quick enough here from Minnesota so we can move missiles from one place to another very quickly. We can move large troops from one place to another very, very quickly. Our bridges got to be a certain height. So as we're moving our missiles, they don't hit the bridge. You know, that they can clear the bridge, because that'd be a disaster. It's like, oops. You know, Germans had the Autobahn, we got the interstate. And you don't see it so much now, but I remember in the 1970s, I always thought it was kind of cool. Okay, growing up in Newport, you stand up, crossing railroad tracks, you know, get to the other side, but you kind of delayed getting across Highway 61 because here comes the convoy of military vehicles. And you're like, oh, that's kind of cool. But now that you know, it's like, oh, the troops are going somewhere. Maybe it's just a mission, or maybe what's underneath the truck here. You know, what are they carrying in the truck? But it kind of look cool. All these green vehicles, boom, boom. And we're not talking like 5 vehicles, and we're talking 50 vehicles going. And sure enough, they probably are going to go out to Forts, up to Camp Ripley, or going to someplace in Wisconsin, whatever it might be. But just highlights again, that's Garrison State. Cost of the Cold War is going to be trillions of dollars. Bottom line, a lot of White Castles in my mind. All right. Sorry, I have digressed. I got on a roll here because I can eat this stuff up. And thanks for on there. I think it was epic. Wow. What that means though is this: we're not doing an assignment because we're almost near the end of this road here, or of this trip. And so here's what we got. We're not going to have a Google Meet tomorrow. I'm not gonna give an assignment. So that means if you have everything in, you're history free until Monday. If you have missing stuff, just work on it. Take advantage of the time. Take advantage of time, because you know what? We're running out of time for this trimester, because we are going to start week 5 next week, and there's only 6 weeks in this trimester. So, yeah, if you're missing some stuff, let's bust a move on it. If you're done, you're history free till Monday. Thanks to those who are at home for hanging on. You have a great day, and I will check back with you probably on Monday.